Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to Wendy Wayne, a good friend of mine.
Thank you very much.
Nope, got it.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you, Greg. I feel so lucky tonight. I got to have dinner with Alan and John. And if they represent the rest of you here, this is one incredible group of people. They both are way above 200. I think Alan is 300 and something. And John is 300. And Alan is a young 92 years old. So I just have to say thank you to all of you. I would not be standing here tonight if it wasn't for each and every one of you. So I want to start by saying thank you. 3 years ago, I was sitting where you were. I had donated blood. I had my 2-gallon car license plate holder, and I had picked up a pamphlet, and I was going to donate platelets. Now, I wasn't looking forward to that part of going to Houchin where they ask you all those questions. How many times have you had sex and who with, and how many new tattoos do you have? And I would have been farther along on my donation, but as Greg mentioned, I'd done a fair amount of traveling, and I always dreaded the fact that they'd go, oh, let's just look up the last place you went and see how long you have to wait now. And there were several times when I waited a year or two before I could give again. But I was like you. I was a donor and very happy to do it. My life was very full. I was married to this incredible person that Greg just described, Jean Tackett. We had 2 sons, and at the time, we had 2 daughters-in-law that were like the daughters I never had, and we were actually expecting our first grandchild. And then something very special happened to me. I like to set goals in my life, and one of my goals was to visit every continent, all 7 continents, and swim in every ocean. That's 5 oceans. Well, I had not quite achieved that goal, and then my husband, Gene, surprised me, and he took me to the 7th continent, Antarctica, and I swam in the 5th ocean, the Antarctic Ocean. And so I thought my life was fulfilled. I had everything I wanted, a wonderful group of friends, extended family, a new challenging job as the director of First 5. I'd just come back from this wonderful trip, and then something started happening. I got very tired, and I was losing weight, and I had night sweats, and I went, wait, I've done the menopause thing. I don't want to do this one again. But it wasn't menopause, and I went to several doctors and finally ended up at Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles. And after lots of testing, they announced that I had stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, the very aggressive kind. And the first thing that happened was they took me into a room and started me on a blood transfusion. And I thought, this can't be right. I'm a nurse. I know I've been healthy. I did everything right. I ate right. I didn't smoke. I just finished walking my 3rd marathon, so I was in pretty good shape. I'm supposed to be the blood donor, not the blood recipient. And my tables completely turned. Now, I remember the doctor coming in after my first transfusion, and he said, how are you feeling, Wendy? And I said, you know what? I'm not feeling very well. Could you send for some blood from Bakersfield? I want one of those oil field workers or one of those farmers that gets up at 5 in the morning and goes out and works a full day, has biscuits and gravy at 10, goes back and works again, and then goes to hotels for dinner and has plates like I saw you having tonight. I think you gave me some wimpy old man in Los Angeles that spends his time on the freeway. But you know what? I decided that every person that gives blood is an angel because they were saving my life. My life really was turned around, and my friends and family just gathered around, and their mission was to get me through this journey. One of the things that happened was my daughters-in-law set up a website. I was really too weak to answer any phone calls, and Jean was busy taking care of me. And on this website, it said, in lieu of flowers, meals, care packages, etc., please hug the people you love and do an act of kindness. I think we can all agree that hugging and acts of kindness are the best ways to honor and support Wendy during this fight. She'd love to hear about these random acts of kindness, so go do something good in Wendy's name and then email her or post it on the website, and that will help buoy her spirits more than anything. And they couldn't have been more right. Now, I was in the hospital when this first started, and I remember Jean driving me home from Los Angeles and saying, you have to see this TV report, Wendy. These kids got together, and they did an act of kindness for you. And when we got home, I watched the news, and there was a group of children, this was in March, on their spring vacation that started a lemonade stand. And they raised $500, quarters for the homeless. I was so emotional. It just kept going. Then somebody delivered a DVD and a big, long banner that was signed by 25 people that I had hardly knew. They had gone out and spent a Saturday together planting trees along the bike path. And people posted these wonderful acts of kindness on the website. And they were things as random as young women that cut their hair and sent it into locks of love. And a friend who saved a steer who had gotten out of a corral. I remember one of my favorites was a friend who had gone to Sedona, and she said to this lady in line, I'd like to buy you a cup of coffee. And the lady says, I don't even know you. And she said, but I have this friend, Wendy, who wants me to do something nice today. Could you just let me get you a cup of coffee? And she did. I received a note from a woman who's a 5-year cancer survivor herself, and she said in her card, before you start thinking how I could have used the money for this card in some other way, I want you to know that I was at a mini mart, and there were 6 boys ranging in age from 5 to 8 putting their change together to buy a soda. So I gave each one $1 in your name. Those acts of kindness absolutely did buoy my spirits. And there were hugs going around this town. I don't know how many of you know that Greg Gallion is the super hugger of Kern County. But there were pictures posted on the web of Greg Gallion hugging people in my honor. So Greg, thank you belatedly for that. My big lesson was that committing acts of kindness or giving someone a hug makes you feel as good as the person that receives the kindness. So I've committed myself to try and give back any way that I can, especially to family and friends who are dealing with cancer. Hug them as often as possible. I think it was Maya Angelou who said, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So all these acts of kindness buoyed my spirits, and by the summer of 2008, I was feeling pretty good. I'd been through 8 rounds of chemotherapy, and they declared me in remission. And I was just getting ready to go back to work, and we found out that my daughter-in-law was diagnosed with thyroid cancer, and she was pregnant. And so I did a lot of soul searching and made the decision to leave my work and reprioritize and be able to be available for her. Shortly after that, her father was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. But I was getting better. And in fact, I took a part-time job, and I was in Los Angeles. I'd driven down by myself. That was a very big deal. Went to a training and then went to Cedars for my follow-up, had a scan done, and went into the doctor's office. And this doctor I will never play poker with, because you could not tell from his face what he was going to say to me next. And his words were, Wendy, I'm sorry to tell you that your cancer has come back, and chemotherapy will not work. And the only thing you can do is have a stem cell transplant. Which means that basically they just blast you with chemotherapy till you have no cells left, and then reinfuse you with stem cells. It's about a month in the hospital, and it's a pretty drastic procedure. Well, I was alone when I received this news, and I drove home, and by the time I had been home, I had made my decision. I knew that I had been to all 7 continents and swum in all 5 oceans, and there wasn't any reason why I needed to have a stem cell transplant. And I shared that with my husband. And the next week I went back just for some follow-up at Cedars, and I realized that there were other people in my family that didn't like my decision. And my son and his wife were visiting, and they gave me this little blue box. And inside this box are hundreds of little pieces of paper rolled up. And each little paper had a reason why I should go through with a stem cell transplant. And they were things as fun as who's going to make waffles on Sunday morning, to who am I going to confide in? That was my brother's, I'm sure, because he's always telling me his girlfriend problems, rather. And then there were some as profound as, because the greatest gift is still possessing the strength to fight. And so I did make the decision to go ahead, and I had a stem cell transplant done at City of Hope. And I'm wearing this button because 2 days ago I went back to the oncologist for a follow-up scan, and the button says 10,000 BMTs, which means 10,000 bone marrow transplants have been done at City of Hope. And I was one of the very fortunate to be one of those 10,000. And I can talk about it today because I had that bone marrow transplant. When I was with my oncologist on Thursday, I said, you know, I'm going to be speaking to a group of platelet donors on Saturday night. And he looked at me and Jean, and he said, you tell those platelet donors you are alive today because of what they have done. Because I had many doses of platelets when I had none in my body when I had my bone marrow transplant. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much. I will tell you that there were many times during the month that I was in the hospital that I had to open this box and unroll those little pieces of paper to be reminded of why I was doing this. But what I learned more than anything is that it's so important to tell people what they mean to you and do it today. When you go home tonight, tell your family member why they're important to you. And not just look at them and say, Jean, you mean the world to me. Jean, you mean the world to me because you have stuck by me for the last 3 years and were my sounding board when I really needed one. Your coworkers, the people that you spend time with, your children, your parents, they need to know that you're not taking them for granted, that they are very, very vital in your life. And give them a huge hug, too, because that really helps. To the world, you may be only one person, but to that one person, you are the world. I just finished reading a book that meant a lot to me called Making the Impossible Possible, and I wanted to pull a quote from it because it seemed like it fit all of you tonight. It says, there's no experience that makes successful people feel more vividly, passionately, and purposefully alive than the chance to use their talents and resources to bring more dignity, hope, and opportunity into the world and reduce the suffering that devalues so many human lives. I think it applies to each of you sitting in this room who have given so generously of your personal resources. Your willingness to devote the time it takes to give plasma to save the life of others. The best way to live your life is with the assumption that your purpose on the planet is to strive in some way appropriate to your means and your talents to make a difference, to save, in essence, a little part of the world. And I want you to know that you have saved a very big part of the world. Thank you very, very much.